things that really drew me to this organization was the fact that it took me almost 10 years to get my foot in the door. And I don't think anybody should ever have to take that long to get into something that they're truly passionate about. Even when, just trying to find an entry level position. So that's what really pushed me to go ahead and become a member and really start this. So I will say that engineering is part of our field that I don't know a lot about. So this panel's been a bit challenging, but I'm always up for good challenges. So I did my best to try to reach out to different corners of the engineering and hard science industries within our field. I got 3 really good representatives, so hopefully you guys get a lot of it. Due to some technical issues we're working on, I'm going to go ahead and change up the lineup a little bit. I'm going to start with Mr. Victor, and I'm probably going to kill his last name again, Victor Fleites. He's the
Got it.
emergency He's the Emergency Preparedness Program Manager for the Customer Service Business Unit of Florida's largest electricity utility. He's responsible for projects directly related to hurricane preparedness and recovery, such as business continuity planning, emerging technologies for customer communications during emergencies, and coordination of command and control for customer service during an emergency event. He's served as the distribution engineer, commercial and industrial account manager, power quality advisor, and led teams responsible for operational excellence and analytics. Mr. Fleites holds a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering from the University of Miami and is certified business continuity professional. So, yes, the you. Go ahead, Victor. We're going to go ahead and turn this over to you, and you can share your screen for your presentation.
Well, thank you, Tammy. I want to thank you and Lorraine for inviting me to this panel. I'm very excited about being able to share my experience with the group. Uh, I want to kind of start out with giving you my definition of what emergency management is. And as a reminder, I work in private industry, so it's not a municipality or government agency, but to me, emergency management is the mitigation of damaging impacts to the business. And whenever you talk about the business, it's ideal to think of it as how are you going to keep your operation running? And really, when you're in private industry, the focus for emergency management in general is about making sure that all of your operation is still functioning. So, sort of to get you in the mode of my day-to-day activity, I break this up into 2 sections really. One is the planning piece, which is instrumental to any good energy emergency management program. And the other is the actual management of an event. And I'm going to talk about both of those things on 2 different slides. So from a planning perspective, the plan provides the business with what we consider the justification for any measures that you provide to protect any of your critical functions or activities. Now, the way this happens is not just through osmosis. There's a very prescriptive method for making sure that your plan has teeth. You start out with identifying those critical functions and prioritizing them. This is done through a business impact analysis. Anybody that's involved in business continuity has probably heard that terminology. Once you have that business impact analysis, or the BIA as they call it, you develop a narrative. Basically, it's a story of how you protect these critical operational functions and what would happen if any of those critical functions were interrupted. And we use these categories to sort of classify how these critical functions are impacted. There are 5. I use these words. You may hear something different in different industries. I use people, places, systems, vendors, and documentation. Obviously, people is your personnel. How are you going to keep the function running if your personnel are unable to work? How are you going to make sure that your function continues if your facilities are impacted, if there's a fire on a particular floor? or if you have the bad luck of having someone find a white powder in a mailroom, all of those things obviously impact your facilities. Systems, obviously, tonight is a testament to what has happened in the past 9 months with respect to technology. The fact that we're all on this Zoom call together is really something that was unprecedented in April of last year. Once you have all of these critical functions documented and you have your narrative and you sort of explain how you're going to protect these functions, you're going to have to get acceptance from your executives and your stakeholders. Once you've done that, the next obvious step is to drill the plan. And just to give you an idea, I participate in 5 drills a year. They're different drills. They have to do with hurricane preparedness. They have to do with cyber attacks, capacity issues. We also train and drill for situations where we have outside attacks from foreign bodies or from actual civil unrest. So once your plan is in place, the next, I guess, the other piece of what my normal activities are involved with is the actual management of the event. So I have a definition of what that is, and to me, event management is the business of using your plan to handle an emergency, and that has a lot of different components. I've just listed a few here, but I'm sure there are a lot more that the panel can think of. First and foremost is command and control, is standing up the organization and making sure everyone knows what's happening. The notification has to be crisp and it has to be clear and concise. You have a logistics component. What do you need in order to make sure that the people that are responding to the event have what they need in the way of materials, meals, lodging, transportation? Are there any permits that need to be pulled in order to be able to get the job done? Another area that's critical as part of an emergency management team is the messaging and communication around it. Internally, externally, all of these things are key to part of what you can do to make sure that your stakeholders, your business partners, the employees in the company, and any other customers that might be impacted by the event need to know so that they can make decisions about what they need to do in order to either consume your product or to be able to come. Then last but not least, a very important component of this is having contingencies if any of these other things are not working properly. For example, systems can fail, and especially if you're in the middle of an emergency, the last thing you need is your email to not work or to have your communications interrupted. So you have to have a contingency for those things, and that's another part of our planning that we do in private industry on a regular basis. So I want to wrap it up with sort of a, where do I fit in type conversation. And I've listed a few of the areas that I work with on a regular basis. And I've tried to provide some sort of guidance on what sort of background you would need in order to kind of fall into one of these areas on the ground floor. Now, I'm talking about on the ground floor because as Tammy alluded to, sometimes in emergency management, it takes a long time to get into a role that is of critical importance, or even in planning. And a lot of times that's due to the fact that the expertise that you gain as being in an industry or part of an organization is sometimes very important so that you can make decisions based on what you know about the different components in these different departments. So from a technical perspective, the most obvious area where some of the folks work is in information systems and the management of the technical infrastructure in general. And this includes cyber. Cyber defense right now is huge in emergency management. And if you're pursuing any sort of a career that has anything to do with cyber defense, you're probably going to be very busy right from the get-go as soon as you graduate. In general, technical backgrounds, either engineering or any of the sciences, are probably ideal for any career that sort of starts in information systems. Another area that I work very closely with is human resources and the risk management team. And where I work, human resources, risk management are all part of the same business unit. And it's interesting to note that most of the other industries that I've worked with, I have found that a lot of the business continuity programs originate in the risk management area. And I guess that makes sense because what you're doing is you're providing a sort of a temperature reading of what the risk is of loss for these different critical processes. So that's why risk management a lot of times has sort of the lead on kind of coordinating the business continuity plans in general. The backgrounds in human resources and risk management typically are public policy, social sciences, and obviously an HR background. But that's not limited to any of those. I've met folks that go into human resources that have engineering backgrounds. They have all sorts of different backgrounds. It all depends on what your tendency is with respect to what kind of work you want to do. Next is marketing. Marketing communication is crucial in an emergency management program. They are probably one of the most sought after careers from the perspective of understanding how to communicate effectively and making sure that, again, your stakeholders and your customers, your partners in the industry and any agencies that you work with get the information that they need, again, to make decisions about what they need to do next in either to support you or to consume your product. Marketing is one of those careers where you can do just about anything and be part of a good marketing team. I've known people that have a journalism background. Business, obviously, and marketing is pretty common. I've also met folks that have technical degrees and in marketing because if you work for an industry that's very technologically advanced or that has a lot of technology associated with it, the folks in the marketing team have to understand your product. So a lot of times if you're good at writing and communicating and you happen to have a technical background, marketing is a very good place to kind of start or kick off your career if you want to understand emergency management. Obviously, governmental entities such as police, fire, any professional municipal emergency managers like we have on the panel here today, those folks are also really important partners for just about any industry that supplies critical infrastructure. So again, most of the people that I've worked with in those areas either come from a public policy background, either a law enforcement, fire background, or military. Those are the types of folks that I have found in those areas as I've been progressing through my career. I also wanted to share with you something that I was reminded of when Tammy did her introduction. I also did not start out in emergency management, as you may have heard in my bio. I'm an electrical engineer. I started out in the electric industry maybe 2 or 3 years after I graduated. I actually worked in consulting engineering for a while in construction. So emergency management was not something that I actually thought through. And it turns out I've been doing this for about 12 years and I love it. So I'm grateful to have found it. I'm grateful to be part of this, especially for an electric utility, which is a critical infrastructure as defined by FEMA. And it's really helped me kind of round out my career as I've moved forward. So that's all I have. Tammy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Victor. And you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen. Next up, we are going to have Jay Barringer. And before I get on to him, I just want to let you guys know, if you have any questions at any point for the presenters, you can go ahead and drop them in the chat box. You can either direct them to me or Lorraine, or you can just put them to everyone, and we'll go through, see what times we have at the end, and go ahead and get anything answered that you guys might have questions on. And of course, with all this technology and everything going on, you'd think we'd have all the glitches figured out by now, but for some reason we don't. And Jay is unfortunately fallen victim to one of those problems. We just cannot seem to get his camera turned on. So I'm going to read his bio, and then when I'm done, I'm just going to screen share his bio with his picture, just so you guys, aren't listening to a black screen. But Jay Barringer attended Harrisburg Area Community College Fire Science Technology. He holds a certified environmental and safety compliance officer through the National Registry of Environmental Professionals. He also has been a member of the fire science for over 45 years, holding every position, including hazardous materials chief and borough fire chief. He has 32 years in the safety, health, and environmental field with a large food and beverage manufacturer, and he's developed many environmental, health, and safety programs, including the Emergency Action Plan, the Business Continuity Plan, the PPC Plan. I'm hoping he can help with some of these letters. The SPCC Plan, Process Safety Management Programs, and Emergency Response Plans. He's a member of our LEPC through Lancaster County Public Safety Training Center. He's president of the Lancaster County Industrial Safety Council. He's on the Columbia Borough Fire Department, and he's a local emergency management coordinator for Columbia Borough. He continues to provide his company and community with a proactive leadership and direction for business continuity with safety in mind, as he understands how to develop and implement a best-in-class safety culture by clearly articulating the vision, objectives, strategies, policies, and procedures necessary to succeed in this ever-changing climate. One of the things that helps bring Jay to the table is he can actually bring his hazardous safety with his emergency management skills. When you start to think of the really large corporations like DuPont, Texas Instruments, things like that, that's where you start to get a lot of the OSHA stuff that overlaps with emergency management. And that's a perspective that Jay can bring to the table. So Jay, I'm gonna go ahead and share your bio, and you can go ahead and unmute and go ahead and start talking.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. And I would like to thank you and the EMGI for inviting me to speak this evening. I appreciate that very much. Okay, so I understand we're under time restraint here, so I will get moving right along. Emergency management has been part of my life for many, many years. And I'm going to go a little bit about how it came about for me. I started in the fire department when I was in middle school. I was 14 years old and joined as a junior firefighter. And primarily that was because my father and brother were involved in the fire department. At that time, my father was also the EMA coordinator, as it's called now, but back in those days, it was the civil defense director. So, things have kind of morphed over the years. I joined the fire department as a junior, worked my way up, and also joined civil defense as a member of that. So I got, that was my initial exposure to emergency management. Working there primarily just as what you would call a grunt. I would do anything that was needed. We had some flooding events and some storm events that required civil defense to be activated. And so that was my initial exposure. I worked my way quickly up through the ranks of the fire department. And I like to attribute that to spending a lot of time studying. I got my I went to school for fire science, became a hazmat technician, and spent a lot of time just learning about hazardous materials. spent a lot of time studying natural disasters because of my interest that I got from being a part of civil defense and just a lot of fire service management classes. So by the age of 23, I was an assistant fire chief. I was a deputy fire chief by age of 26 and became fire chief at age of 29, which back then was pretty young for a fire chief. Today, it's not so much because the way the fire department, the fire service has evolved, things have changed, and people move through the department more quickly than before. I then started in occupational safety and health with Turkey Hill Dairy. And at the time, it was a relatively small manufacturer. It's grown substantially over the last 40 years. At that time, Turkey Hill had no formal environmental safety and health program. And so with my fire department background, I was actually working there in another capacity in IT, believe it or not, with all the issues we're having tonight. And I was approached by the management of Turkey Hill and asked if I would consider starting in the EHS program because we didn't have one and they were looking to get something started. So I gladly accepted that challenge, knowing that, feeling very confident that I could make something happen. So I developed our entire program, and I oversee the fire protection and detection systems also, which in a lot of places it's a maintenance function, but we look at it more as a life safety issue. So I took that on as a challenge also, which with my background, they just felt that was a natural transgression. So as we went through and were developing these programs, identified the need and started our in-plant hazmat team. We are located in a rural area, and at that time, the estimate for a hazmat team to arrive on the scene in the event of an emergency was about 2 hours. Till we got there, got set up, and was ready to go in and make an entry. So for those reasons, we proceeded with developing our own team. We have chemical, hydrous ammonia, nitric acid, acids, and caustics that we use for cleaning. We have the entire team trained to the hazmat technician level, and we still maintain that today. Our team is, this week will be 30 years old. So it's been around for a long time, and we've tried to, grow with the company. And I was also a hazmat duty officer for the county because our fire department hazmat team, along with another team in the county, ran the entire county at that time before we had a centralized county team. I then identified a need for an emergency response program and developed that. And when would you call the team? That type of thing. How do you determine a leak by size? What's the human impact of that leak? Some of the things that go into that type of program. When also like when you would call regulatory agencies and who would make that call. Not many people know this, but for the National Response Center, you were to notify them within 15 minutes of determining you have an incident. And a lot of times, that call can be a little, the information you need to provide with them can be a little hard to get and make that call within 15 minutes. Also, we had that plan identifies how you would collect the information needed for calls and or reports. How do you determine when to evacuate a building, our entire campus, and or the community, depending on what size of incident that occurs there. So after we got that program done, I looked and said, well, we need to expand on this a little bit. So I identified a need for an emergency action plan and developed that program. Now, the emergency action plan is a little different in the fact that it defines what are the roles of the leadership team. So when we have an emergency, we don't want the leadership team standing there while we're trying to mitigate the event. We want them to be doing their thing, planning and those types of things. So that's an emergency action plan. What are the roles of the other key players? You know, our distribution team, our logistics people, what are they doing during that event? Where are the locations to assemble for various size incidents? How to tie it all together? How do you make this whole program come together? And then also, as Victor had said, we developed a business continuity plan. And some of the things that we have in there is, what do you do if it's something other than a hazmat? If you have an extensive loss of power or technology, because technology is a big thing today. If you lose that, what does that mean to your operation? We have, a lot of freezer capacity because of our, our ice cream and a lot of our ingredients. So if you have an extensive loss of power, what do we do about that product and ingredients? How do we get that relocated? And that's within a relatively small window because, when the power goes out, it's going to start warming up. And even if you button down everything, you only have a limited amount of time to get that product moved. Pandemic effects on the operation. Right now we're in a pandemic, but what would happen if we would see, and we've been very blessed, we've only had a few cases here and there, but what if we would have a major outbreak of COVID that would, shut down our operation? How would we react to that? What do you have in place to make things happen? Alternate plants, those types of things to make our product. What if it's a fire or an explosion? What do we do then? How do we, what do we do about our operation? How do we keep things going? What's our plan for that? Or if it's a natural disaster, hurricane, tornado, flood, blizzard, any of those types of things, what do you do about those things that direct impact to the operation or even an indirect impact, if it affects the employees, where they live or how they travel, our suppliers, our customers, any of those people, how do we keep our business fluid that, at that time? So that whole, as we developed that whole thing, and it just kind of morphed into our big emergency management program under the umbrella of emergency management. So the other things that I also take care of is our process safety management and our risk management plan. I manage those, so it ties together because they're all ammonia related. And so there was another component there. So as the company grew and as things changed, the more and more just kept getting added on the plate. But it's one of those things that if you enjoy what you're doing, you want to take it on. So then at that time, I was asked to be which was last year, I was asked to be the EMA coordinator for my municipality. The guy who did it previously retired, and they said, hey, we were looking at what you have done over your career, what you have done in the private sector with the fire department, and we just wondered if you'd be interested in doing that. And I quickly jumped on that offer and took them up on that. So, I enjoy what I do. I've been doing it for quite a long time, and I consider myself extremely blessed because I was told when I was young by my father, and I still believe this to be true, that if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And believe me, I'm having fun with what I'm doing, and it's been great. So thank you for listening to me. I really tried to keep my time down, so I hope I didn't do too bad. And I'll turn it back over to Tammy.
Thanks, Jay. We had a third presenter tonight who also herself was having technology issues. I'm not sure. Karen, were you able to get on? No? Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read you guys a little bit about Karen's bio and then just kind of tell you a little bit about what she does and how it pertains to emergency management. What I may end up trying to do, if we can't get her on before the end of this, is maybe just have her do a quick, little 10-minute recording that we can just email out to everyone. Just because what she has to say is actually really important, and her experience is really, it's a lot for this field. So it was going to be Karen Moore. She's with the Army Corps of Engineers out of the Huntsville Center. Karen Moore's an Army civilian with over 25 years of experience, including deployments to Afghanistan, managing the United States Corps of Engineers Environmental Footprint Reduction Program. She currently serves as a project manager in the Energy Savings Performance Contracting for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers located in Huntsville, Alabama. In this capacity, she's the government lead for managing energy, renewable and non-renewable water and waste projects to help installations be resilient. Prior to that, she was the government lead for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Operational Energy Program. Operational energy is the energy required for training, moving, and sustaining military forces and weapon platforms for military operations. She manages the Operational Energy Program for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer Area Operations, which consists of 20 countries in the Middle East. She's tasked to transition the Operational Energy Program from short-term programming of pushing projects to building a long-term projects which shapes policy, procedures, and funding. The Federal Emergency Management Program recently selected the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Renewable Project photovoltaic solar light carts as the first central command to receive the FEMP 2017 Energy Award. Moore has a bachelor's degree in human resource management from Buckner University and has several certifications for program management and facility engineering from the Defense Acquisition University. One of the big things that Karen brings to the table is, from an engineering perspective, is kind of loops together all the continuity stuff that we were talking about. In this particular case, most of her stuff has to do with military installations and making sure that they're running, because obviously they get set up in places where they don't just have instant access to a utility pole that they can plug into. But outside of that, a lot of what she does is, sorry, something popped up and distracted me. She's trying to work with hospitals and stuff to create solar, more or less solar powered generators. I know, like in our area, if we were to lose power or anything like that, we run on diesel fuel. Well, if we have a big snowstorm, or where I come from in Florida, if a hurricane rolls through and all the fuel tanks are now destroyed and we can't get any fuel. I mean, I went through Andrew in 1997, if memory serves me correct, maybe 94. All the storms of 2004, I think one way or another, I got hit with every single one of them. When the floodwaters come in and you're without power, you're also without fuel. So she's creating generators that will work off the solar power to help keep the facilities and the infrastructure running. It really is. If you actually Google her name and the photovoltaic solar lights, she's the one that gets the credit for it. You can see all the information on it. It's really quite interesting. So like I said, it was unfortunate. I'm really sad, unfortunately, that she is having these technical issues. I was working with her earlier today, and she was able to get on. I'm not quite sure what the problem is at the moment, trying to get her in, but hopefully we can, if nothing else, get something recorded and sent out to everyone with that information. So. And with that, does anybody have any questions? I haven't been able to watch the chat box fully.
I can get us started with a question for the panelists. Since getting the first question out is typically always the hardest. So, and if anybody else has a question, you can speak up. We're a small group, or you can put it in the chat if you're more comfortable with that. But so Jay and Victor, what first steps would you recommend for someone who is studying or working as an engineer and wants to start stepping into emergency management? How can they start if they've discovered that this is an area that they would like to dive into? Thanks.
Jay, you want to take that, or?
Well, I would say if they have any interest in it, the college or university they go to, I would check to see if they have that program. A lot of I don't know how many now, but I know that there's quite a few colleges or universities that do have an emergency management program. Or if they're that passionate about it, maybe they would want to transfer to a school that did have that program. So I think that would be the first step. What would you say, Victor?
That sounds like a perfect segue into what I was going to recommend, because I do believe that you can get emergency management as a minor as part of the engineering program. If not, there are a lot of lead-ins in the technical world. Again, if you're in a technical background, more likely than not, you're going to end up being as part of some either a technical infrastructure team or something along those lines with respect to emergency management. It's all about disaster recovery, making sure that your backup systems are working and things of that nature from when you're in a technical field. Other than that, it's really just up to you to look for opportunities in companies that have that as one of their offerings. When we put out an offer for an emergency manager, we were looking for someone that was certified, not necessarily somebody that had any particular degree. So if emergency management is your passion and you are an engineer of some sort, you could just simply continue your education in the certification piece, either become certified as a CEM, a certified emergency manager, or as a business continuity professional. And from there, it's very easy to find work in just about any industry once you're certified.
Awesome. And then I have a follow-up question actually for the two of you. What are some of the qualities or some of the skill sets that the two of you had with your background in engineering and the hard sciences that really made you a good emergency manager?
If I may go first, the ability to communicate and cross-functionally. You need to understand, you need to have empathy. You need to be able to see things from other people's perspectives and to be able to relate to them in a way that allows them to believe that you have their best interest at heart. Because part of any emergency manager's job is to make sure that you're protecting the business or protecting the entity. If the folks that you work with think that you have either if you can't communicate that to your stakeholders, it's going to be very difficult to move forward. But being a great communicator, I think, is important in this job.
Yeah, Victor pretty much summed it up. The only thing that I would add is the ability to stay cool, calm, and collected under pressure. You will get challenged. It's hard to tell what kind of challenges are going to come up and what kind of, even when you think you have things under control and it's going your way, there's always something that'll happen to, to make things more difficult for you when you least expect it. So the ability to remain calm in those situations is important also.
Thanks. Are there any questions from the audience?
I know. Thank you both for your comment all about your pathway into this field. One of the things that for the folks who might be well into their degree and just may have seen this come up and decided to join today, let's say somebody is that hard sciences student who's getting ready to graduate and is looking for different ways to step into the field. When you're both in working, do you recommend any like different volunteer organizations that you closely partner with that you think prepare you for this field? That's the question.
I'm not so much thinking of volunteer work as much as working with the municipal entities locally for me, so that I get to know them. When emergencies occur, that community really comes together very quickly. And oftentimes I find that even though it's sometimes a social event, you go to their meetings, or the municipal emergency managers have meetings where they bring the community together to talk about different projects that are in the works and things of that nature. And I'm not really a municipal representative, but I attend those as part of what I do, only so that I can get to know them. And that interaction that I have with them has taught me so much about the needs of different municipalities, the community itself, the types of activities that occur during a natural disaster, where I'll just give you a very brief example. We really didn't understand until someone came up to us and explained to us that their shelters need to know more about when those customers are back in service than the general population who's already sitting in their home, because their primary objective is to empty the shelter. And so we developed a program to help those shelter management folks be able to communicate with those people in the shelter as to whether or not their service has been restored. And it has been a huge win for both of us.
And I can say, as someone who grew up in South Florida, live on the same grid as a school or a hospital.
That is true.
I was 1 block away from the elementary school grid. They got their electricity back in 24 hours, and it took me 16 days. I'm just saying.
I wasn't involved, so I'm sure it wasn't because I was not there. Actually, in 2004, I was in the field, so I don't know if I helped or not.
And a lot of the information that these gentlemen are saying is definitely accurate. I can say one of the big savers for me, like I said, it took me 10 years to get my foot in the door. And if nothing else, volunteer, continue your educational classes. FEMA and all the different organizations that are all involved in emergency management all have free or continuing education. There's organizations called TEACS, Texas Engineering, LSU, all of them have these different types of classes. I know actually just today I got an email that TEACS is doing emergency management. I think they're labeling it industrial certification, and it's touching on all 4 parts of the hard sciences side. It's going to be public works and everything. I think it's like a 4-part class. They're all free. You just sign up, you take them, and then that's 1 more certification under your belt. So definitely the information's out there. Network, stay active on LinkedIn. That is probably one of the biggest things that you can do to get the information that you need. And the best phrasing that I can say is stay relevant. Because eventually something will come through, and we're definitely getting into a world now where it's not just necessarily about the degree, it is more about the experience and the contacts and you know what you can do. So,
and if I may, emergency management is really a small field, and we really like helping each other out. And I think especially because we're such a small field, it seems like it's quite easy to know people, even if they're not just local people, but in other states. So if you see someone on LinkedIn who has a job at a at a company or at an organization that you think you might want to join, just reach out to them and ask if you can have an informational chat with them. Or if you see somebody else and you want a warm introduction, try reaching out to your network. I think there's lots of great opportunities to connect with emergency managers all over who can link you up and provide you resources and internships or other positions. And there are lots of organizations out there where people don't think that they have an emergency management group, but it turns out that they do. So it's always worth checking out if you have a dream employer.
It looks like Brad may have a question.
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you, by the way. I have about 20 years experience in healthcare, and I have an undergrad degree in healthcare administration. I've done the FEMA classes, the 200, the 700, the 800, the 100, and the 907. I know there's another one, a professional emergency manager, where it's like 6 or 7 classes you can do online. So I'm working on that. I volunteer with the Red Cross. If I'm looking to transition out of healthcare into emergency management, would it be advisable to obtain a master's degree in emergency management? I mean, I know that's kind of a hard question to ask, but if I'm kind of starting from the bottom.
You don't have to get a master's degree. So are you looking to transition into healthcare or emergency management, or
Some other aspects of emergency management?
okay, so out of the healthcare setting?
Preferably.
I know so many people transitioning into it.
Yeah.
So no, you don't have to get a master's degree. Like I said, you said you're volunteering with Red Cross. Reach out to the community network. Think about what you want to do in emergency management. Lorraine was saying that emergency management is a small field. It's a small field, but one of the things I learned when I was job hunting was there's so many little sectors to it. There's your planning, there's your response, there's your mitigation, there's your recovery. It's figuring out what you want to do. I originally went at it with a shotgun blast approach, going, I'm just going to apply for everything. And eventually something will stick, and it didn't. And so I started kind of narrowing down, thinking what I liked. I like to do the planning, and I like to do the training and exercise. I really love to teach. I really love part of the training exercises is testing the plans, which is where kind of the planning rolls into it. So they kind of go hand in hand for me. But I really like to see where the breaking point is and then find a way to fix it. So that's where I started focusing all my efforts on training. I started doing more volunteer time with the consortium of colleges that I'm part of and works on our full scale training exercises. And then that just eventually rolled. So find that little niche in emergency management that you kind of want to roll into and start finding the contacts in it. I can tell you in my adventures to put together these 4-part panels that I'm working on, I have found so many people on LinkedIn that I'll just go through, no idea who I am. They've added me and now we're having a conversation. So they definitely, I mean, just find it and just ask. People love to help.
Okay, thank you very much.
And ask for the mentorship. You know, tell them when you've connected with them, be frank and say, hey, I'm looking to get into your field. You know, what suggestions do you have? Do you have any openings? There's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that I hesitate to accept on LinkedIn is from people that are trying to sell things, and it's obvious in their profile that that's what they're doing. But if there's any hint as to the individual's interest in a common something common to what I'm looking at, I will absolutely help in any way I can. In fact, when Tammy reached out to me, I was very excited about the opportunity to help in some way, because this industry does sometimes operates in the shadows, and that's not the right thing to do.
Great, thank you.
And Brad, you know, when it comes to you working at a hospital currently, and then trying to transition into like emergency management, but you're still working at Red Cross. So I do think that you're also in like a great position because you work at a hospital that potentially, I'm pretty sure they have an emergency management department. So
I'm
even
sure
though
they
you're,
do.
even though you're not thinking about, emergency management, thinking that you're doing it right now, I'm pretty sure there's certain things that you do in your job description or trainings that you have to do or exercises that you may take place in for the past however many years that you've been working, that, even if you wanted to get a role there, it could easily be vouched for, like, hey, the work that I do at Red Cross plus the work that I've done here, that can easily, set you up to get a little bit of experience in an area that you're familiar with, and then take that experience to go, if you don't want to work in the healthcare setting, next it might be higher education, or next it might be somewhere else. But, for me, I think the best part about emergency management is you can get in wherever you are. For me, I started in higher education because I went to the school, and I was able to make enough connections to actually work in that role. So I appreciated that. And then that was a stepping stone to now I'm like, okay, working with a global company, but it's different. But sometimes, like, the people that you're going to be like the most familiar with, how it was said earlier, your main tool is going to be communication and building those partnerships, because you want people to show up, and you want people to be ready and willing when you send those exercise invites, or those training date invites. You want people to be ready and willing to accept it. So wherever you are, I think you'd be a great addition to any organization. You just have to say, hey, I'm ready to add on to whatever emergency management you got going on. I want to make it stronger, and I'm pretty sure they'll be happy and take you with open arms, because it's not too many people, just like everyone else has said, it's not too many people that come confidently saying, hey, I want to do emergency management. So people are always happy to help.
And one last thing that I'll add is typically if for something that can really help you is if you have experience sitting in an emergency operations center and filling a position. And a lot of organizations, they pool people from different departments. So I know when I worked at UCLA, we recruited people to work in our EOC in the different positions from all kinds of departments. So maybe there's an opportunity for you to volunteer to be in one of those roles. And if you have that position, we trained our responders to the California state level certification. So their training is as good as, an emergency managers or somebody with the city of LA or what have you. So that could be also another way to get that hands-on experience.
And to familiarize yourself with the EOC, FEMA just released a new EOC training toolkit. It's literally a step-by-step process of different positions in the EOC. So even if you just read through those, they're almost like job descriptions, more or less, of what different things in the EOC are. Even if you just read through them real quick, it kind of gives you an idea of what goes on in an EOC. So your first time in it, you're not completely lost. I mean, it's not difficult, but there's a lot of moving parts. And as a Red Cross person, you can actually come in and be a liaison. We have a Red Cross liaison in ours. Lovely old man, older than Father Time himself. But he is our sheltering person. But well, it's almost 8 o'clock, so I'm done on my end. Lorraine, do you have anything else to add?
No, unless Victor and Jay have any final comments.
I just thank you for allowing me to be part of this.
Thank you.
Yes, same.
Right.
Thank you very much for inviting us to speak.
Well, I'm sorry Karen couldn't be here. Like I said, I'm going to try to get a recording from her, and we'll get it emailed out to everyone at the email address you used to register with. And if you have any other questions, you have the Lorraine put our LinkedIn profile on there. I'm sure there's some contact information. You can shoot them to us. And worst case scenario, maybe we can get you in contact with someone in your industry if you have some, really specific related questions. So, and thank you,
all.
everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you all.